We have a giant problem in this country when it comes to school discipline, and unlike many of the other complicated issues that we're facing in the United States of America, this issue actually has a straightforward cause and a straightforward solution, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the Brevard County out of Florida, outside of Orlando, school district, the resignations, and all the problems that are going on. And we're also going to talk about how the media is covering it, how they're obfuscating the issue, and how they're trying to make it all about the sheriff's response to the crazy rise in criminality in the public schools, rather than what's going on in the public schools themselves. But before we get into this video is in fact sponsored, so I'm going to have to chuck it over to the sponsor, but don't worry, I'm going to bring it right back over here, and we're going to discuss it on the other side. Gold is heading for $2,000 an ounce, and that's not me saying this, that's not my speculation, that's according to Bank of America's own interpretation of the data, and considering at the beginning of this month, we started at around $1,800 an ounce, and it's steadily climbing, it doesn't look like that's outside of the realm of possibility. And considering all the problems in the crypto market, it makes sense that people would look for a safe haven in something tangible, something real, something with a long track record of being able to hedge against inflation, and of course, that's gold. And luckily for you guys, I'm actually sponsored by Noble Gold Investments, and if you go over there, you can talk to an expert, look up what you can do to secure your retirement, and if you open a qualifying IRA this month, you will be gifted an American Virtue 3-ounce silver coin. That's 3 ounces of silver, and all you have to do is call them at 877-646-5347 or visit them at noblegoldinvestments.com and open a qualifying IRA. Noblegoldinvestments.com. Again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com.
They know they're not going to be given after-school detention. They're not going to be suspended. They're not going to be expelled. Or like in the old day, they're not going to have the cheeks of their torn off.
So likely, if you've seen anything related to the story we're going to talk about today, you've actually seen that clip right there, because that's what's going viral, that's what the left-wing media is covering, and that is what is triggering outrage from people who are totally unfamiliar with the situation. And we all understand why that clip went viral. Here you have a small-town sheriff standing in front of a jail talking about how we're gonna do some whooping on the kids in the schools because the kids are supposedly misbehaving, and that is ridiculous. That's absurd. That is totally not representative of what's going on. Let us all not look into the fact that what we're actually talking about is what may actually be the most violent school district in the United States of America. Now, to be clear, I think this being deemed the most violent school district in the country is a bit hyperbolic. However, there are some serious problems, and we need to get into them so you can understand what actually led this sheriff to go up there and why the left-wing media is trying to deflect to crazy redneck sheriff rather than focus on what the heart of the issue is. So Brevard County is a county that's actually quite close to Orange County, which of course houses the city of Orlando. Now, if we look at our Florida gubernatorial map, we will see that Ron DeSantis actually won each and every major city in the state, except for specifically Orlando, and of course that's Orange County that is in the blue in the middle of the state. And again, that's just to give you an idea of the political geography, because I think that plays into what's going on here even more than people are letting on. Now, this school district actually is having a lot of trouble. Around 40 teachers have resigned from this school district, and 8 bus drivers, due to what they say is a pattern of unparalleled and ridiculous violence. In fact, it has gotten so bad that there have been a number of hearings where teachers have voiced their grievances, and honestly, I think that even playing the teachers describing the violence that they have to deal with might actually violate YouTube's terms of service and get this video demonetized. So what I'm going to do is actually go to an article, so that way we can save some time, read you some of their quotes, so you can understand, just get a little bit of a slice of what's going on, what these teachers are experiencing, and what is actually happening in terms of political consequences due to this problem going unchecked for years.
IAs that I work with and myself, we have to talk to each other in the morning and motivate each other just to get to work, because we know what we're going to face when we get there. On an everyday basis, I'm deflecting, being attacked, scratched, head-butted, pushed, kicked. I've had my hair pulled and been pulled down to the ground. I've had my throat gone for on multiple occasions. And it's on an everyday basis right now. This is not always the norm. because I certainly didn't expect that. And it wasn't like this when I started a long time ago. There was some discipline problems, but it was not this type of severity. I know that there's laws that protect our kids, and I agree that there has to be laws that protect our kids, but I think it needs to protect all of our kids and our employees. We should be able to go to work and feel safe. And our other children who are witnessing every day, they're witnessing myself and other people being attacked. And also, children have been hurt because they get away from you and they go to harm other students, and it has happened.
I have students who are afraid every day in the classroom, she said. It's not fair to them. That's what hurts my heart the most. One student began masturbating inside the classroom, an act that was recorded by a classmate and posted to a group chat. Another teacher was hit in the face with a tape dispenser, while a colleague suffered a bite mark the size of an orange after a student munched her arm. Another teacher had to resort to removing all furniture from the classroom due to the fact that students would routinely chuck the furniture at one another. Staffers assert that sexual misconduct, drug use, theft, violence, spitting, and property destruction have become routine, demoralizing hallmarks of his profession. Now, the common theme asserted is that a culture of unbelievable disrespect has taken hold, one teacher said. Her kids look at their devices hundreds of times each day and keep their earbuds in while lessons are in progress. Quote, our students cannot look away from their phones, she said. They cannot stop texting. The scale of the disrespect and lack of concern for the education system is so high in this school district that teachers report that when they call on a student to answer a question, pertaining to the lesson that they're actually teaching in class, routinely they get a response like, hold on, I gotta finish this message, and then they'll actually try to answer the question, usually wrongly because they're not paying attention to the events that are going on in the school. Now again, we've all heard exaggerated reports, we've all seen videos, and some of us have actually been unfortunate enough to look at the statistics related to violent instances in our K-12 education system. But I think nothing speaks louder than any of that than the fact that this is being shown to us in the resignation of teachers and in the resignation of bus drivers, because even transporting these kids to school has become so dangerous that bus drivers would rather just leave, do something else completely, forget about their commercial driver's license, because the kids are that off their rocker. Now, anytime I talk about a local issue or anything like that, and the area happens to be left-wing, I am always given a response, something to the effect of, you get what you vote for. But to be clear, the school board elections have actually recently happened, and they changed over the mostly left-wing school board for a more conservative school board who has decided to take aim at woke policies. And this is what brings us to the bad coverage that we're getting from people like the Young Turks, because as I was recently called out for doing on Timcast IRL, apparently everything always goes back to the Young Turks.
John, actual justice warrior, he's great. His job is just to crap all over the Young Turks. It's awesome.
Now, the entire focus of the Young Turks segment is based on mocking the sheriff, saying, oh, the sheriff is just trying to live up to his tough on crime brand.
This sheriff really prides himself as being the most politically incorrect sheriff in the country. So part of it is, trying to live up to his personal branding, which is pretty gross.
The sheriff is just saying ridiculous things because all the sheriff is trying to do is get elected, which, by the way, certain parts of that are true because the sheriff is an elected position, but they're completely missing any meat related to the story, like the fact that this school district is incredibly violent, and the sheriff is actually speaking to something that his constituents are concerned about. And one of the things that they gloss over is that in the beginning of this, one of the reasons why he's interested in introducing more discipline into the classroom is because he doesn't want these kids to end up in jail.
We got to get to these kids before they get to me here at this jail.
Now, of course, Anna, just like the rest of the left-wing media, go off half-cocked and talk about how there must be some systemic problems. There must be some systemic structures of structural institutions, systemic, and that's the reason why there's so many issues with discipline in the K-12 education system, specifically in that area.
Well, the other thing I'll bring up is there are some systemic issues we could address that could make it easier for teachers to take control of their classrooms, namely classrooms that don't have hundreds of students in them, mainly a situation in which there are the appropriate resources in place to ensure that kids are getting the education they need, they're getting the attention they need.
It's not any woke policies or anything like that. It's systemic structures. Maybe the classrooms are way too large in this area. Well, first and foremost, they're not. The state of Florida actually caps classroom size at 18, and if you're in grades 9 through 12, it's at 25. They have some exemptions, for like when 40 of your teachers resign, but you can't really help the fact that classrooms are getting larger when the violence is so bad in your schools that the teachers feel like they need to quit their job because nobody is allowed to do anything. She also ends up talking about poverty. There's been a lot of talk about mental health because the real issue of these kids being on their phone, having no respect from the classroom, and committing such egregious acts of violence must be a mental health crisis, but in reality, that's not the case. But there is a systemic issue. There is a problem. There is something afoot in this area, and it goes all the way up to the national government. Now, before, it was an issue of a policy that was instituted locally because, again, this was a more left-wing school board. They've gotten thrown out, but now they're running up against problems with the national government. And of course, this has to do with the Equity in Suspensions program that was started under Barack Obama and continues under the Biden administration.
But I'm really curious what the parents think, right? So it's one thing to hear tough on kids, I'm politically incorrect sheriff say these things, but I would like to hear from the parents.
See, because what Anna Kasparian missed, what the left-wing media missed in this story, even though Anna specifically said, I wonder what the parents think about the sheriff and all these people talking about discipline in the public schools in this way. I wonder what their opinion is that they've actually stated their opinion, and their opinion is they need to have some form of a colorblind misconduct policy in the K through 12 schools in this area, because clearly this idea that you need equity and suspension is creating a ton of problems in this community. You see, the main issue that's being faced in Brevard County, and it's an issue that has been put forward nationwide, largely due to the fact that Biden's education secretary, like Obama's education secretary, is pushing for this idea that if you have unequal outcomes according to population, not according to behavior, in suspensions, then that somehow is an issue of the school to prison pipeline and must be racism. And you see numbers in these articles from these activists talking about how Hispanics only represent about 12% of the student body population in Brevard County, and blacks only represent about 14% of that student body population. However, according to the numbers, they represent half of the suspensions that are going on in that district. Now, while there's obviously a discrepancy between the population and the rate of suspensions, this discrepancy is not due to racism. Look at any violent crime statistics. What you find out is that black and Hispanics commit more violent crimes than their white and Asian counterparts, so it's not unsurprising that we would see this violent tendency reflected in our K through 12 education system. People's peak offending years are age 14 to 25 or 24, depending on which statistics that you're looking at, and this idea that all of a sudden in the school system, they're not misbehaving disproportionately, but as soon as they come out of the school system, then they start misbehaving disproportionately, doesn't make any sense at all. And in fact, when you actually look at the numbers and you realize that we're talking about 26 to 27% of the student body population being black and Hispanic, and they only represent about half of the suspensions, what you realize when you compare that to the criminal statistics is that this is likely the result of under-suspending these kids. They would likely represent far more of the violent instances and thus the suspensions, but due to the fact that they have all these equity and inclusion policies, and you are vulnerable to being sued as a school district for treating people differently based on their behavior, because again, it's based on their behavior if the racial outcomes are not equal. That's what these teachers are dealing with. That's why the community has gotten together, because they believe this crazy idea that if you pick up a chair and you hurl it at your teacher, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, you should likely be suspended, if not expelled for that. And to me, it's quite telling when you have parents, students, and teachers all coming together to say the same thing, that they want a colorblind disciplinary policy, that organizations like the NAACP put out the fact that this guy's standing in front of a prison, even though he said his goal is to make sure they don't end up in prison, and say that this is somehow some form of bigotry. Our children are not clowns, said local NAACP member. They are not snot-nosed. He accused Ivy of using scare tactics and bullying in pushing for disciplinary clampdowns. Again, our students, from a guy over at the NAACP, who do you think he's referring to? What do you think he's trying to fight back against? They're using the fact that suspensions are already disproportionate, even though by the numbers, we can tell that they're being artificially kept down for Black and Hispanic students, to say that the current policies are racist and argue for less discipline in the schools. When you have 40 some odd teachers that have resigned just this year, by the way, it started in August, we're not even through the first half of the school year, and 8 bus drivers, this guy is still pushing this idea that the school is racist and is trying to use the sheriff's comments about what's going on after this has gotten out of hand, not before, as proof of that racism. This is the problem that they're facing in this county. This is the problem that a lot of school districts nationwide are facing due to the fact that these policies exist in a certain level on the national level, and in local areas they've adopted these woke left-wing worry about the outcomes and the numbers and how that looks more than anything else kind of disciplinary policy. I don't agree with that. You shouldn't agree with that, and a lot of the parents and a lot of the students don't agree with that because they're afraid to go to school because the teachers are disincentivized from disciplining the students to the level of bad behavior that they actually have. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you agree with Anna Kasparian and whatever person she's working with now on the Young Turks. I never know these new staffers, and think that this is all about a crazy sheriff saying something crazy. Let me know down in the comments below if you actually learned something from this story, or if you want to double down on the equity and suspensions over in Brevard County. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, all that jazz. Till next time.